What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Actually Useful, the podcast where we diagnose what's wrong with the internet and chat with the lovely people trying to make it better. I know last episode we didn't have a lot of news, but I think you got something juicy for us today, Ariel? What's on the docket?
I have to give full credit for this report to More Perfect Union, which is like an amazing independent journalism outlet. They do really great content for working class people, but I'm not a gamer, and this is a gaming news. This is the enshittification of Game Pass, which is Microsoft's like subscription product to be able to play as many games as you want. So this week that we're recording, which is the second week of October, Microsoft raised the pass price of Game Pass Ultimate from $19.99 to $29.99, which is a huge increase in price. It's a 50% lift. Apparently, people are canceling their subscriptions so fast that the site crashed, which we love to see that. We love to see when a big tech company is going down from too many canceled subscriptions. And the context here is that basically Lena Khan got a bunch of shit for saying that this was going to happen, and then it did happen. So in 2022, Microsoft wanted to buy Activision, who makes Call of Duty, and the FTC blocked it. They said this is classic trust behavior. Lena Khan is on record as saying in the documents, Microsoft would have the newfound ability to degrade Activision's games through changes in quality and price. So like literally, she's like, this is what they're going to do. They're going to lower the quality. They're going to raise the price. They're going to lay off workers. We see this all the time. Don't do it. Let's just not do it. So they blocked the merger. The FTC did. Then courts came in and said it was illegal for the FTC to block the merger. The sale was still going on when Microsoft jacked up the price of the standard tier Game Pass and removed access to day one releases, which is like one of the biggest features of being able to have these Game Passes for standard price players. So like while it was happening, Lena Khan was able to be like, hello, I said that this was going to happen and now it's happening. The sale ultimately did go through. The FTC was not successful in blocking that merger, which is annoying. So the sale went through like 2 years ago. And of course, now they're doing literally exactly what she said that they were going to do, because that's what's going to happen every time we let these companies become monopolies. And she got so much like misogynistic shit for saying that this was going to happen. People were like, are you an idiot? Like, do you not know anything about shareholder value? I mean, Lena Khan is so smart and so savvy at what she does. And I feel like this is a perfect example of people just not heeding all her expertise. So that's the news for today, unfortunately.
Well, it seems like the whole game industry is just going into the shit. EA recently, Electronic Arts, was bought by a consortium that includes Jared Kushner's Affinity Partners, Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, and private equity firm Silver Lake in a deal valued at approximately $55 billion. This is the news in just from Josh, our amazing producer, who's on top of it. Classic Jared Kushner, am I right?
Yeah,
just
dude.
Getting his finger in all the evil pies.
On that note,
thank you for that amazing news. I'm so excited by our guest today. I actually went to college with her. Both Josh and I went to college with her. And we were discussing earlier, we were all Febs at Middlebury College in Vermont, a tiny little liberal arts school. So Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. It would be awesome if you just gave us a little intro, your background, and what brings you on the pod today.
Yeah, thank you so much, AJ, and thank you, Josh, for coordinating and setting up this whole thing. It's really awesome. It's my first podcast.
Yay!
Kind of nervous, but no, I think that you invited me because I've been a product manager for the last 6 years at Amazon. But I think, backing up, I'm originally from Ohio, really small, like classic big box stores in the suburbs, Ohio, and went to college in New England, in Vermont, and went to school with like a bunch of people from like big cities like LA and New York and SF. And, when I was there, I kind of was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Ended up being an econ major just by default and didn't really know like if consulting and banking were my path. And while I was there, I always felt like I was a little bit behind. Like I'd show up to school in the fall and, surprise, like the J. Crew sales rack that I shopped was not in fashion anymore. And like all these kids from like these big metropolitan cities were like leading the trends. So while I was in school, I actually ended up starting a business with a couple girls called Share to Wear.
Woo! I use that all the time. Let me tell you,
Wow.
saved my life. Frequent flyer of Share to Wear.
Yes, that's right. And the service was a platform for girls to rent dresses from one another's closets and make money off of those rentals. And it was like perfect because it was this two-sided marketplace of like people like me who really wanted to wear like this season's it dress at a fraction of the price. And then also for the girls that had like a million of the it dresses and, wanted to make some money. So I think that really was like my first foray into working on a group project successfully and like tapping into some of the mechanisms of being a product manager. Didn't know it at the time, but that was probably the best thing I did in college and I really loved it. And eventually just wanted to like build on top of that, like loved making fashion accessible and got a great job at Amazon. I joined actually through their supply chain finance analyst program. So not really what I had envisioned, but really great experience. And I actually ended up working in warehouses, Amazon warehouses for a year. I lived in like rural Wisconsin, rural Fresno, California.
Wait,
And
I didn't know this. I feel like I have so many questions. Also, Fresno is like the hottest place I've ever been in real life. And I can't believe you worked in a warehouse in Fresno.
I did. I worked in a warehouse. I went to work with 3,000 fulfillment associates every day, parked in the same parking lot, ate with them at lunch every day. And it was like the purpose of the program was to train analysts to have like the most granular view of Amazon's supply chain. And when I was in Fresno, my role was like figuring out how to labor plan California fulfillment centers. So like how many people do we need to hire, but also how many people do we need to fire? And like that was to this day, I still think that was probably my most important job because these were like real people's livelihoods.
Yeah. You might be the only person at Amazon who cares about these people's livelihoods. So we're obviously, AJ and I obviously have hated on Amazon before. I feel like that's like on brand with the nature of the podcast, but we love you and we want to hear like the thing is obviously Amazon is sort of a big bad that is hard to get away from as a consumer. Tons of people we know work in it. Like we have lots of friends that work for, Meta, Amazon, whatever. Like they work for
Also,
Tesla.
I did work for Amazon for a summer.
Yeah, also AJ literally worked for Amazon.
I think I hit you up about this, Michelle. I'm pretty sure we had like an info interview when I was applying because I think that I can't, unfortunately, I don't have old iMessages, but I'm like, this is all coming back to me because I worked at Amazon for a summer and then I also went into logistics as a PM and was doing
very cool.
But then Amazon became the bad guy because basically we were trying to help the smaller trucking companies compete with the Amazon effect, and with all the the 2-day delivery windows, and there are these trucking companies that all of a sudden have to change their whole business model. So Amazon went from being my employer to like enemy number one, basically.
Yeah, like enemy.
But yeah, to Ariel's point, we know that there are great people inside of every organization.
Yeah. And I think like having spent my career in startups, I can tell you that like for better or worse, a very common theme that I've referenced on the show before that happens at startups is as they're scaling, they look to companies like Amazon to set the paradigm for how they should be organized, for like what their titles should be called, what their pay bracket is, how they organize their org chart, who they're getting invested with, like what types of products they're doing. It's definitely like, I mean, it's a huge change maker in the industry. Now, my experience has been that every time I work for a company that's scaling and they're like, we should be more like Amazon, my quality of life goes down at that company every time that happens. But there's obviously something to be learned from that. And so we're super excited to have you here and to tell us the goods and the bads that happened in your time at Amazon. Okay, so you went from warehouses, shipping, supply chain logistics, and then what happened? You changed roles a couple times, right?
Yeah. Well, so, I spent my year working in the warehouses. And, I will be honest, like I was a liberal arts major in a liberal arts college in bucolic New England. And then bam, I'm in like a warehouse in Fresno trying to figure out like the exact variable cost per unit for every package that gets shipped. So like that was like a crazy life transition.
Yeah.
And there were times that were really challenging, but I really think like your first job kind of like teaches you a lot of skills that you take forward. And I think my first job being like so granular and having to know like every single process actually was like something that I still do to this day. Like I really like being in the weeds. And so yeah, I finished up a year in the warehouses and then I got recruited to a team in Seattle. And I ended up working on like a bit more high visibility projects. Like at the time, we called it Project Maverick, but that was 1-day shipping. And so I was the financial analyst that put together like the total cost impact to Amazon to launch 1-day shipping. And that was like, that felt like big leagues because it was such a, under the wraps project. And it was also my first time that I was like in a room with all these people that make a project like that come to fruition, including engineers and product managers and the UX designers who would like, were working on the features for the homepage that we're going to say like Amazon 1-day shipping, like available now. And I feel like my world got so much bigger. And I was like, oh my gosh, like PMs have a really cool job. Like they get to be creative and like the visionary, but they also have to like know what's going on. Like they were like talking to me who was in finance at the time of like the entitlement and the opportunity and like all that. And I was like, I really was feeling like I wanted more ownership in my career. And it felt like product managers had that type of ownership that I was looking for.
Yeah, totally. So tell us a little bit about like how you experienced the ups and downs of feeling like your work was useful. Because I know in conversations you and I had leading up to this, we talked about sort of like anytime you work at a large organization, like the dilution of work happens where it's like something that starts like such a good idea that's so aligned with what customers actually want doesn't end up being the thing that goes out live. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you experienced that, projects that stood out as being either feeling really useful or feeling like it was sort of disappointing to you as the creator of it?
Yeah. Well, my first product manager job was, I think, the one that I still like really reflect on and really love. And that was when I transitioned to fashion as like a supply chain product manager. So that kind of was like the most full circle moment because I had loved working on Share to Wear. And then I got to work for a service called Try Before You Buy at Amazon, which allowed you to try up to 6 items in the comfort of your home before only paying for what you choose to keep. And so that to me was like, an amazing, it was amazing for a lot of reasons, but I think the projects and services I worked on where I felt the most useful and where I thought were the most useful were where like I was deeply empathetic of the user.
Yeah.
And this was like 2019, 2020. And so the pandemic was just happening and like malls weren't open. And so I felt like this was like a great way to let people shop, be safe. And also just like, if you don't like going to the store to try on jeans in 4 different sizes, like you can do that in the comfort of your home. And if you want to like try what was in season at the time, like tie-dye pajamas,
Yeah.
like you could do that in the comfort of your home. And I felt like that was something that like I really resonated with. And it was really exciting to work on that project.
Yeah, awesome. And so like what happened how did your job end up transitioning to when you felt like okay, some of these products are getting watered down at the end of it?
When I joined Amazon and like in my early days as a product manager, I think Amazon as a whole was very growth oriented, really exciting stuff like delivery speed improvements and like Amazon Studios and Prime Video was getting really big. And they were taking like a lot of big investments and like growing the business. They still are, but I think that they were making like really splashy moves in that sense. And I think you could really feel that energy too as a product manager. Like you get to grow and like you get to like try new things and not feel too worried if it fails, because at the end of the day you're at this giant company that everyone knows that like they've got a great market share. So like it's okay to like try like small fashion programs, like try before you buy. Maybe they're not like the biggest profit driver, but I think like especially in the last couple years the focus has moved more towards the bottom line and like cost cutting, especially as like a retail and like online e-commerce company. That has like kind of led a lot of the work. And I think like also as a byproduct, like you feel like you can't really like launch something unless it also proves like that it's going to like save money as well as make money. And so I think like when you feel like a little bit more conservative about that stuff and when your leaders are more conservative, it makes you, I think, just a little bit more cautious and like not want to take as big of risks. And I think a lot of like the best products have been ones where, people have taken big risks.
I'm curious, like, I think one of the biggest, I mean, obviously Amazon contributes to fast fashion like a lot of companies do. I feel like apparel on Amazon in particular is one of these things where it's so hit or miss. And I think there is a reputation of like clothes from Amazon being like really inexpensive and very unreliable, right? That like they arrive and you're like, this isn't at all what was in the picture. I mean, a lot of fast fashion companies have this issue, right? Where they're churning out work so quickly and it comes to you, it smells weird, the dye is all over your hands, like it doesn't fit. And I'm curious, like from your perspective as a person who works on that product, like a big adage I really hold true is that like the product journey, like the user's experience journey ends when they have the item on them, right? Like it ends when it's in their hand. It's not just when they make the purchase. And I'm curious, like from your role individually, but also how did it feel being on the inside of that? Like, does that problem feel really big? Does it, like, I think sometimes when you work inside something, the perspective is very different than what it might be for me as somebody who's only ever shopped on Amazon. Like I've never worked for Amazon. So I'm curious, like, how did you guys approach that on the inside? Was it an important problem? Was it a lucrative problem where that was like by design? How did that work?
Yeah, I think that like I don't want to say that we didn't think about like that end user aspect, because I know I definitely did.
Yeah.
But I think that, and I was thinking about your previous question and want to add on to that too. But I think that in big companies, you just have to move really fast. And sometimes you lose that customer empathy. And like, for example, the best way to like know how you, Ariel, feel about like the cheap clothing that you buy on Amazon would be to interview people like you and like get your take. But like that takes a lot of time and resourcing. And like Amazon has always prioritized, I think, speed over like perfecting CX. Like there are other companies that I think that care more. And like you can tell, like Apple is a great example. Like they really care about the customer experience. They care about like the iPhone in your hand and how it feels. I don't think Amazon does. And like that, like, and it shows, So like, I think like one thing that also happened a lot as I was like progressing in my career as a product manager, but also like, seeing how the company changed, is it got really big. And I think like when companies get really big, there's more bureaucracy and there's like a process death spiral. And like one thing that I faced a lot, and I think probably led to some enshittification, probably on my end, is like to even get something launched. Here's an actual project that I tried to pursue that like didn't get anywhere, which is like people think that fabric, like the fabric from Amazon clothing is like really cheap. So like how do we in some way like share reviews on fabric so that like you're not catfished when you buy a sweater thinking that it's like luxe cashmere, but like, it's more of a cotton blend. And like I wanted to like show like how people felt about that fabric on the detail page because you have no information when you're shopping on Amazon. And so like just to get that launched probably took like 3 to 4 months of like design iterations and discussions with like 10 to 15 different people who shut me down, or like gave me feedback. And then I had to go back to the drawing board and do it. I guess like it's helpful to maybe explain like the big tech corporate, not just culture, but like how people are organized. So like me as like a fashion product manager has a team of engineers and a UX designer. And then, there's probably like 50 other pods like me within fashion, like product manager, 6 engineers, designer. And then like every single aspect of Amazon has the same. And so you're talking to like probably like 10 to 15 different teams that each have like some contribution to your product, whether that's like, or to your feature, whether that's like, the detail page itself of like, there's that team has like 10 UX designers to like try to figure out like where to even put this information. Like, do you put it above the fold? Do you put it below the fold? When you scroll, how many seconds does it take for like the average thumb to scroll on an Amazon detail page? And then where is the appropriate place to put that information? And how big is it? Every pixel counts. So like all of those things are like, kind of like cloud your original vision of what the feature should be. And you have to get through the gates of like these 10 to 15 teams to like sign off before you even actually experiment with this to get data. Like this is before it even like, it's not even launched yet. It's just an experiment at this point. And so that's an example, I think, of like, sometimes at the end of that whole process, you're so tired that you're like, I don't even remember what my vision was, but like, it probably wasn't this. But I just spent the last 6.5 months of my life fighting with 15 teams. So let's just experiment with it and see where it goes. And I think that process happens a lot. And I really only know Amazon. And so I can say confidently that process has happened more as I've like progressed in the company. But I do think that it's just a symptom of growing and scaling a company really fast and adding all these processes that at the surface level, you're like, okay, there's a lot of oversight to like putting a new feature on the e-commerce site that 300 million Americans use. But like underneath the surface, there's no real path to like make that feature really like customer centric.
Something I loved at Amazon that I've actually tried to bring to other companies I've worked at is the dot culture and the idea that everyone, you establish the why really clearly and have to lay out your case, and everyone would go and read the document and you talk about the work versus like, I feel like a lot of meetings that I've been at companies, it's a lot of like talking about talking instead of just talking about the concrete, what are we trying to build? Is that still a part of your culture? And how do you think that process has evolved? Do you still back it as this is a great thing? And was that a way, is that an antidote to some of the things that you're talking about? Or is it like the doc process happens, but then we still get stuck in all these semantic meetings?
Yeah, I really loved the doc culture. And Ariel, I don't know if you're aware, but basically whenever you had a new idea or, wanted to make your case about something, you wrote a 1-page document. And the purpose is like, once you have that on paper, it's harder to like fluff something up versus like having data points and like your idea laid out so concretely. So I think that was a great part of like thinking through a new idea.
The reason I know what that is that I've worked at 2 startups that were like, we're going to start doing this like Amazon now, which for the record, I am a person that is like, if it's not documented, it doesn't exist. If if it's not documented, I don't believe it. Yeah. I don't think it's ever happened. Like I totally am in favor of like documentation, but I'm curious because, okay, so you have this process in place. You are a person who obviously cares about your customer. You were informed about fashion. You cared about the fabric, right? I'm assuming for the sake of like just benefit of the doubt that there's tons of other people like you who work at Amazon who
100%.
care about the product and their work. You then have this great process in place where you have all this documentation so that people stay accountable for it. But then something happens. You have to go through these 4 months of bureaucratic bullshit. Like, what do you attribute that to? Like, what is it that that's trying to, what risk is it trying to avoid? What is it trying to double down on? Because I have some conspiracy theories about it, but I'm curious what your thought is, having been in it and lived it. Like, what is missing that keeps your advocacy from getting to the customer?
So, I mean, I'm dying to hear your conspiracy theories, but I think what's funny, this fabric was like not even like my biggest hill to die on. I've had other projects that I really like fought tooth and nail and were like, it's past everything. I've even experimented and I have good results, but like, oh, this one team out of the 10 teams I need to satisfy, I didn't satisfy one of their secondary success metrics. And so we cannot launch this project. Like that's happened to me like upwards of 5 times.
Yeah.
I think what's funny about the whole process is if it worked, all of the features that launched on Amazon would be excellent. And I don't think that you can say that. Like I even today was making a return and like I clicked on the return for the item. I said that it was too big and then it said like fill out this text box of like give us more information. So I filled it out. I was like phone case was too big for me. Then entered that, another text box appeared underneath that was like, is there anything else you want to add? And I was like, how did this clear the CX bar? Like,
Yeah.
question mark? Like, you just asked me in a text box beforehand. And so, yeah, that's just a commentary that like, this whole 4.5 to 6 month process, I'm not convinced it works. I'm dying to hear what you have to say though.
Well, I mean, it's interesting too, because I do think it's easy to forget that Amazon for a long time was like the best product in the business. Again, this is the enshittification cycle, is that it has to start genuinely good. Like you can't just start with a shit product and then expect that somehow, unless it's like, the government, which is a different thing, but you can't just start with like Amazon was great. There was a period of time where like their customer service was crazy. Like their customer service was so good that there were like memes about how the Amazon customer service rep like saved your life, like saved your marriage. Like there were like jokes about how good the customer service team was. And obviously like the shipping speed was groundbreaking. Like they invested in speed in a way that, for better or worse, really changed the industry, as AJ saw firsthand suffering from it on the logistics side. But yeah, in the last like 5 or 6 years, really since the pandemic, I think there's a couple pieces. There's obviously like the disgusting wealth of Jeff Bezos and everyone involved, and like people are getting really pissed about that, as they should be. But then also just the degradation of Amazon's experience. Prices are going up, quality is going down. Like that's a classic enshittification curve. I personally believe that big companies, not just Amazon, but I think a lot of big companies, when they make these processes, because to your point, like it's obviously not working. Like obviously a lot of people now are using Amazon because they've squeezed out the market in such a way that both the advertisers, the third-party resellers who are on the site, and the customers are kind of being held hostage. So like there are just things that you can't get without being in the Amazon supply chain, right? And so now it's not that their product is necessarily superior. It's that like it's infiltrated our ecosystem in such a way. I think that these companies make these processes untenable so that no one person has any real power except maybe real people at the top, right? Like they don't necessarily want their Michelles to be able to come in and advocate, because if you did, there's a certain amount of expectation that the product actually change based on your work, that it become better for its customers. And it's just, simply put, Amazon doesn't have to make their product better for the customers. Like it's making the product worse for the customers and making more money. So like, why would it invest in trying to make a better experience, So I think there's a little bit, I think it's a control tactic that these big companies get to a certain bloated size, and what they want to do is not have any one person be so instrumental in the product. And it's interesting because obviously coming from a startup background, it's the complete opposite. Like in a startup, they try to make you feel, as the PM, as the product owner, that like you're responsible for everyone's jobs and the entire life of the business, which is also not right or healthy. But there's something in between that gives someone real accountability and responsibility and power to be able to like execute their ask, which is to advocate for the customer. So
It was well said.
that's my thought. Yeah.
I'm curious, what are the ideas that you really championed that didn't get over the line?
There's too many.
Share it with the team. Hey, we got Falcon mode. We have a whole segment for this.
Oh
Share
my
it
God.
with the team.
You know, as I was thinking before this interview, like those examples of like maybe where I've contributed to enshittification and also like where I've just seen bad UX happen. I was like thinking about probably my biggest like end-to-end product I've launched to date was final sale returns on Amazon. So creating a new return policy was like crazy, especially because Amazon's known for 30-day returns. And it's not available for most items, but there are some items where it really makes sense, like Labubus, for example, or like, you know, like rare collectibles. People are buying them being like, oh, I didn't get, I don't know, the one I wanted, I'm going to return it. So created this return policy, did a ton of like competitor research. Basically every site uses bold red, like copy that's like, this is final sale. Like nobody wants you to buy it and then like have that buyer's remorse and be like, I bought it final sale. Shoot, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know, when we launch this is going to, you know, be a totally new experience for people buying on Amazon who previously have thought that like you can return anything and talk to customer service and get like all your money back. And so we need to make it so obvious. Let's make it bold and red. Let's just be the industry standard. I didn't think I was like saying anything controversial. And I mean, the fights I had, like, I think I wrote 500 words on why red is better than blue or black. I went in front of like 4 different directors to plead my case and be like, we don't want to be on a news site and be like, Amazon's trying to like, you know, like ensnare these unsuspecting customers and then, oh, you can't return it. Like that's all I wanted. And I think that's like not a controversial take. Like I think everybody should want that. And, you know, I got so many responses like, well, we use red for error messaging. So that's the only color that we use that, like, that's the only purpose we use that color for. So like you can't use red. Or like, well, let's just try black because black's like really standard for like when we talk about return policies. So like, I don't know why you'd even consider red. And just like when I look back on it, like I think that also like kind of contributes to like just like breaking down your psyche as a product manager because you're like, where am I living? You know, like what world am I in that I'm writing 500 words on why red is a better color than black?
Yeah.
Dude, but this is a great point because this is giving me some PTSD of working with various designers who've been so dead set on a design system. And honestly, I think we should interview more designers. I know we had one already, but I think sometimes designers are actually the culprit, not the PMs. Like, I feel like PMs are often the voice of reason or like common sense. And then designers and developers are in their own world where the developers like, but the code and the designers like, but the design system. And we're kind of like, well, guys, let's just think about in the real world. Red probably makes sense here. And they're like so constrained by a system that they can't just like speak to you human to human and be like, oh yeah, let's be a little flexible on this and let's just use red because that makes the most sense.
Totally. And you know what's I adore my designer. She was my like we were going into battle together and she made all these great designs. And you know, we actually were like, okay, you know what? We hear you. You want black. Instead of doing this, let's go run a user research test. Let's go ask real people. In my head, I was like, this is such a tremendous waste of company resources. Of course, people are going to be like, bold red is like better CX than like italicized black. But whatever, you know, like we'll go do it. So we did it. We talked to like 50 non-Amazonian customers. Obviously, like the results were like red, like nobody wants to feel duped. And, you know, we had all this great data, go back into my meetings, like this time it's escalated to like, you know, VPs. And so I'm like, here's the data. Let's do red. Let's not even launch it. Let's test it. Like, you want to run an A/B test? I'll run an A/B test. Like, and it got shut down. So
Stop. This is crazy. This is like, it's gaslighty. It's gaslighty to be like,
yeah.
to spend this much money and this many people to try to tell you something that's just fucking common sense. I don't understand. And this is, again, this is not specific to Amazon. I don't think any of these issues are like specific to Amazon or like exclusive to Amazon, I guess. It's just, yeah, like that's insane. That's an insane process. Okay, so you obviously went through, you were at Amazon for 6 years. You saw a lot of change in that time. You got stymied often. What were some of the things that you did to try to like keep your product creativity high? What were the skills that you used to try to like navigate this system? So that, I'm sure a lot of people in tech, I mean, this part of this podcast is about like, how do people work in big tech without losing their fucking minds? So like, tell us, how do you do it? What are the skills that you did to keep your quality as high as you could without falling victim to like the Amazon gaslight circuit, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I don't really know if I succeeded. So, um, but I will say it was always, always more fun to work on products that I identified with, or even better, was the end user. Like I loved working on try before you buy because I like so empathize with that of like, I don't want to spend $500 on like 6 new jeans and then like have to wait for like, the money to be returned to my credit card. Like, I just want to try 5 new jeans in my home and see which ones make my ass look good, Like, that is like the experience that like I was designing for and like thinking about like, how do I solve that problem? It definitely got harder to maintain like my true product voice when I was working on projects where I was like, I just don't care. like how do I like show a widget to somebody on like items that deliver to you fast? Like I think that like as a customer, I'm going in with an idea of what I want and I'm probably already going to pick the fastest option. Why am I designing another widget to show and add friction in the customer journey of just like, here are like 10 like items that deliver to you fast? Like I wouldn't care about that as a customer. So why am I designing it?
Yeah, I also like I this goes back to the like rant that AJ and I had with each other in our very first episode, which was that this is a perfect example of like when you become a product manager, you are told all these things about the job that are not true at all in how you actually practice the job. And a good example is that a product manager's job, like one of the things that we own as PMs is the why. Like our job is to convince the organization why this thing that we think should happen on the site is important. Like why does this benefit the user? Why does this benefit the business? Whatever. And when you're in situations like you were in often, if you're sitting there being like, I don't know why this matters, like this is the thing that makes me feel like this is a big problem that goes beyond just the products we make and goes into how we culturally approach work, is like if it's our job to say why something matters and we know it doesn't, like that is spiritually violent. Like I think that's fucked up to do. If your job is to constantly tell people this is important and you're like, I know this isn't important because I don't understand why it's important,
Totally. I think like to that point, like as a product manager, you should always be able to draw a direct line of what you're working on to the mission of the company, or at least like in a big company to the goal of what you're working on. And if you can't draw that straight line, or if you're doing some mental gymnastics to like figure out why this like contributes to that goal, then that's like, maybe you should revisit it. But I think like that experience as a whole, I think happens quite often at Amazon.
Yeah, it also is like, now that you're saying it, especially piggybacking off of like, it's spiritually violent to make people argue for things that they don't actually care about, right? That is also a tactic of it's passion by proxy. So instead of being passionate about the feature that you're actually launching, what you're passionate about is that Steve has pissed you off 5 times this week and you're ready to fight him over everything. You know what I mean?
Totally.
That's the passion.
Yeah.
It's not that you actually care about the feature. It's that you're so pissed off at your colleague that you're just like, fine, I'll fucking fight for it. I don't care. Yeah, that's
Totally. I
yeah.
mean, when I walked into that meeting to defend red over black, I knew that one of the directors was already mad. So I knew the conversation wasn't going to go well. Even though I think everybody, come on, all three of you guys can say bold red is better than black.
Right.
Like no,
Obviously.
like try to argue against it, you know? Like I've heard every single one. And so I walked in being like, I'm going to get destroyed. And it's not because of me. It's not personal, but they are infighting because his team wants my team's engineering resources and he needs to like make our team look bad so that at the next review cycle, they can take our engineers so that they can have a more robust roadmap so that they can like kingdom build a bit better. And, you know, like that happens so many times. And like, I've never heard the term spiritually violent, but I'm like, oh my gosh, that was spiritually violent.
That's David Graeber, everybody. That's our great uncle, David Graeber. Rest in peace. Yeah, he came up with spiritually violent. I do want to ask, I'm curious if you saw while you were working there was a lot of collective action happening outside of Amazon, inside Amazon and outside of Amazon. Obviously, Chris Smalls led up the Amazon Labor Union. I'm a big fan of Chris Smalls. I'm curious, like, did you experience as somebody inside of Amazon, like what did it look like from the inside with the boycotts that went on, with the labor organizing, just with in general? I think people are starting to get a lot more organized around Amazon no buy days, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think what Chris Smalls did was amazing.
Yeah.
I definitely think that for better or for worse, I was just trying to keep my head down and
Sure.
do my work to the best as I could. And I think that the unionizing happened mostly on the warehouse side.
Yeah.
When I was living in Seattle and like working in headquarters, there would sometimes be like some light protests on like climate change and like what we were doing to contribute to it. But it was very like unpopular. Like I would never be like to my boss, like, I'm gonna go join that protest, you
Right.
know, because like that wouldn't really fly. But I do know that there were like things to be signed, like circulated, but I don't really know if there was any like outcome.
Yeah. I was just curious if like inside, sometimes I think when there's like big unionizing efforts and stuff, you get like shady emails from people in charge to be like, this is why the union is bad for everybody. And I was just curious if on the inside there was any like, these protesters are criminals or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I think most corporate employees at Amazon never really had any interfacing with the warehouses. And so it felt pretty disconnected. I think I was actually pretty unique in that I started my career in warehouses and then went corporate.
I had a lot of guilt, and I still do to this day, about how my job as a PM affected the lives of a lot of workers. And we are effectively automating the dispatching and inbound planning function. And I saw during my tenure there, you know, something that usually had 3 dispatchers then became 1 dispatcher pressing a button because of our software. And as somebody, and you brought this up at the beginning, but I kind of want to return to that, like, is that something that you've thought about? And then thinking about Amazon in general, you know, switching over to a lot of robotic processes, AI, like, how do you think about the future of work in AI and automation? I know this is a massive question, but kind of your role as a PM in facilitating that transition. And yeah, how do you think about that?
I actually feel very good about the work I did in the warehouses. I think that's actually the most I've ever like really cared about, so much about the outcome of my job. Like I had to like work on demand planning tools and like make sure that they were correct, because I never ever wanted to make a wrong headcount decision because of me. Like I wanted to make sure all the data I pulled, all the SQL queries I wrote were like absolutely correct. I think like in terms of AI and like how that's going internally, one thing that's happening is you have to use AI. You have to hit a quota with your AI usage every day. And that is being integrated to your promotion docs and like your rating. So every year as an Amazon employee, you get a rating of like least effective to like top tier. And so if you're not using AI at the quota that they've determined for you, like you might not get a great rating.
Stop.
That's like, that to me is like pretty crazy. And yeah, I think that back to your earlier question of like dot culture, I predict that dot culture is going to get a lot worse, because who's actually going to write a well-formatted doc when you can just feed a bunch of bullshit into AI and then it's going to come out with like a grammatically correct one-pager. So
a friend of mine had the best analogy for why these companies have quotas for using AI, which is that it's like in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when Veruca Salt's rich dad had everybody who worked at his factory opening the chocolate bars to try to get his daughter a golden ticket. So these companies, even Amazon, AI has been like demonstrably proven that it does not make companies more efficient. MIT just put out a big report that 95% of companies that have invested in AI are losing money off of that investment. So like they haven't figured out how to actually make it more efficient. I don't know if it actually can, but what they're doing is they're having their employees use AI because they're hoping that one brilliant Michelle Yang can figure out the right way to use AI in a sense that makes it like optimal and cost efficient. And then Jeff Bezos can be like, guys, I figured it out all by myself. I'm the one who figured it out. I got this new tool, this new suite. So that's what they're doing. That's why they have people with these AI quotas. Well, y'all, should we go Falcon mode?
Yes, let's do it. All right, Michelle, give us your best Falcon impression.
Oh no. No.
Come on.
You have to.
Come
you
on.
have to.
Come
Everybody
on.
does it, and nobody does it correctly.
Mm.
So I overheard this one in real life. Recently, I was at a cafe near my house and I overheard friends talking about, they called it the website that shows you where public fruit trees are, which is the Falling Fruit is, I think, the website they're talking about. It's very popular in Los Angeles where we have a lot of native fruit trees that live on public land. Falling Fruit is an urban foraging map, but one of them casually, like flippantly said, why don't we have more sites like that for all the free things? And recently I've been thinking a lot about like tech that supports mutual aid efforts, because mutual aid efforts is like people put so much effort into it, and just the nature of how it works is that it's like very hard to find in a super consumable way, because they come out as like zines or PDFs or podcasts or whatever, and they're like all kinds of mutual aid. It's free stuff. It's also skill sharing. It's like workshops, whatever. So it's really hard to just be like, oh, I need fresh produce today and I'm out of grocery money. Like, where can I go get some fresh produce for free or cheap or whatever? And so that's what I think we should talk about, is like, what if we did have a site with like a map of more things that are free? So I was thinking about it as like, okay, there's actual mutual aid stuff like food pantries and community fridges. There's tool libraries from like our public libraries have tool libraries. So you can get like a sewing machine or a drill or whatever from the public library. There's like little free libraries. There's seed libraries. And then I was thinking it'd be cool if you could integrate like buy nothing listings and like Craigslist free listings and stuff that like kind of falls outside mutual aid sometimes, but is technically still community building and mutual aid. I don't know. What do you guys think?
There's this really awesome nonprofit based in San Diego called Produce Good. And they basically work with people that have like orange, lemon, avocado trees in their backyard that just like, as you guys know, we're in SoCal. Like they pump produce and then it just falls on the ground and it dies. And so their whole goal is to connect like all of these like fruit trees and like avocados and then like give them to low income schools or to food pantries. And I actually was thinking about them, and like, so crazy you brought this up because I'm a beginner gardener and somehow I've become like really good at it. And I grew like, I think 40 zucchinis this summer, which was like way more than I would ever eat. And so I contacted them and I was like, I would love to give these away. Like, especially in Southern California, like nobody, like people should have access to fresh food, like especially where we live. Like it's just not an excuse. And so I was like, trying to get a hold of them, and then they got back to me and they were great. But then by the time that happened, like my zucchinis were starting to like, get kind of old. And it would be awesome to have like some type of app experience that's like people who are like, I want fresh vegetables, and then other people that do have them from their garden or like their trees or whatever. And it's like a more seamless connection because it's so easy to like buy now on Amazon. And like, I just found out my neighbor 3 doors away has an avocado tree. Why am I buying?
Yeah.
Why
totally.
am I buying avocados at Whole Foods? But yeah, I think that idea is amazing.
I think the other thing that an app like this could solve is like there's sort of an idea that mutual aid is synonymous with charity, which it's not. Like the point of mutual aid is like it's not necessarily about whether you can afford it or not. It's about being self-sufficient as a community and not having to shop at big tech or at big department stores or big grocery stores or whatever. But it's also about the relationship building. So like there's this concept of like a mutual aid pod, which is like like you could be like your building or your neighborhood or whatever, but like people who have similar like needs and interests. So like if you had kids, you might want to have other people in your who have kids in your mutual aid pod or whatever. And that's just like the community that you'd hope that between maybe like 30 people, one of you has a lawnmower or like one of you has a saw or whatever. One of you has an avocado tree and then you try to make it work. So I think it'd be interesting to just have something that connects. Like the problem with mutual aid is it takes so much effort to plug into those networks, right? Like Los Angeles actually has incredible mutual aid networks. I think a lot of the cities in California do. But you have to be really, really plugged into that community because again, the way they share information is like it's email, it's social media, it's stuff that requires work to consume it to then match up to what you need. What doesn't really exist super well is like I have this need right now and I'd like to use this as an opportunity to like not spend more money, to make a connection in my community, to maybe trade something that I have that's useful for that. And there is a site called mutualaidhub.org, which is like the closest thing to this idea. But it's really big. I mean, again, it's huge. You can add like this is the idea that I had sort of, which is like it's a map and you can add mutual aid networks and it starts to pull in the information from it. But it doesn't have things like little free libraries or buy nothing or Craigslist free or this stuff that like is not usually thought of when we think of mutual aid. And then B, it's just so huge. Like it's like every state has entries, but every state has like 4 or 5 entries. And so it's like the likelihood that that's in your area is probably slim. So I would love a way that people could also like plug in the information, just like create that loop a little better, you know?
I mean, this is basically the premise behind the Cosmic Jelly network that we're building. And just Michelle, for your context, I've been working on. It's an artist collective. Josh has done some things with it, but like we're musicians and artists all over the world. And the idea is right now in our group chat, people are like, oh, I have a synth you can borrow, or I have a place you can stay. And it's a lot of like swapping. And so we've created this jelly point system, jelly beans, that people like get currency basically for sharing or giving their time or their resources or equipment. And just the problem is kind of like getting it off the ground. That's why we're raising money, because unfortunately there needs to be some sort of like transaction value as you increase the network and people start like trusting people a little bit less. And there's not enough transactions in a small group of people. Like I think, what is Dunbar's number? Is it 250?
It's 150.
150. So like we're actually at 300 now. So like we're a little bit over that. And it's enough that there's like sporadic requests, but not enough that people can rely on it as this is a place that I'm going to always turn to for these transactions and this shared aid. So we're hypothesizing we probably need to get to like 2,000 to have it be meaningful. But then at that point, you do need to have currency kind of come into the mix.
What platform are you building it on?
Like right now, it just exists in Notion and WhatsApp. Like we're turning this into an app, but we haven't launched it yet. So this is like all ideation, and we're kind of working out the economics of like how many transactions would we need to do and how do we keep track of it. But basically right now we have a massive Notion database where people list their resources, their skills, their equipment. And so it's kind of like a mutual aid, but specifically for musicians and artists and the services and things that they need.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've always admired, AJ, your ability to like build community. I feel like I've like seen you over the years do that, and that's really awesome. I feel like you touched on one thing that like comes with like mutual aid and also just like coming up with like these good ideas that I think are inherently a bit charity based, which is like trust and safety. Like once you get to a certain inflection point, it's no longer just like the neighbors on your street. It's like, you know, how do you like feel comfortable? Like I don't know if I would have felt comfortable just going up to someone's random house and giving them 40 zucchinis.
Yeah.
But I also would have loved to do that in theory, you know?
The thing about verification, so I that's why I was like, okay, if we keep it to artists and musicians and you need to get like 2 verifications. That should hopefully be enough. But even with this, like even with a small community, you still get bad actors. And I think one person having a bad experience or feeling like they were taken advantage of just completely shuts down the trust for the rest of it. I mean, it's classic game theory, prisoner's dilemma. It's like everyone's cooperating, one person cheats, and now everyone else starts cheating because it just takes one bad actor to like to change the whole tenor of the little organism that you've got going on.
Yeah. And these like ideas are so socially based that when we say bad actor, we don't necessarily mean someone who's like extremely dangerous or something. It could just be that they're violating the unspoken social contract of the space, right? Like they're making too many requests, or their stuff's bad quality, or their work's bad quality, or whatever it is. Like they're just not fitting the vibe of the group. Which, by the way, the number that AJ just referenced is Dunbar's number. 150 is the number of people that, like, I think it's like that you can have a meaningful relationship with at one time. It's essentially a community number. So the idea came, I think, from like how many, like if you were going to collectively organize, like how many people can be in one pod with one hierarchy before it starts to fall apart. And actually AJ is friends with Dunbar. The Dunbar,
Wow.
the guy.
Okay, don't say that. I met him once.
You're friends.
Literally in the same place
now.
with him in Oxford. What is this, Lord? Take away this, Lord.
Loose ties are more important than close ties.
We called AJ and she's like in Oxford, sitting on the ground and with all these Oxford buildings. And she was like, sorry, I was just hanging out with Dunbar. You guys know Dunbar? I was like, yeah.
If you're listening to this episode, he's going to be like, who? I hope he does.
Well, Michelle, before we wrap up our conversation with you, where can people find you? What would you like to promote? Tell us about what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I've just wrapped up my 7, almost 8-year tenure at Amazon. So I'm taking a much needed sabbatical, and I'm marrying into a family of farmers. They grow strawberries in Salinas, California, and they currently sell them to like local grocery stores, but we're also trying to like work with more regional stores. They're grown in greenhouses, and these are the same greenhouses that my fiance's grandmother and grandfather built with their own hands when they immigrated here in the 50s. So it's really important to the family, and I'm using like my e-commerce skills to build them a direct-to-consumer site. So we just launched it.
Yeah, we'll put it in the episode description.
Yeah, and the harvest is coming up for the next 6 to 8 weeks, and then we'll figure out the packaging. But the goal is to sell perfectly ripe strawberries at a fair price, and ones that you can buy online. Local Californian, 3rd generation grown strawberries.
Oh my God. Wait, this is so exciting. Oh my God. I can't wait to gorge on strawberries.
I think I'm going to order a ton of these, and this is going to be our next cosmic jelly. We're going to make strawberry, because I just see on your website you have jam with us. So I'm totally going to do a strawberry jelly batch.
Yes, I mean, jelly's amazing. We're thinking about making our own jam. And like also, right now we work with like restaurants in the Bay Area, and actually one really amazing ice cream shop in the Mission called Garden Creamery. But eventually, it would be amazing to like do some type of out in the field experience with local Californian farmers on like all their products, and like have some type of like amazing dinner expo experience.
Please invite me. Please invite me. I'm like obsessed with that. Hey folks, quick update after recording. Ichigo Farms strawberry harvest was so successful this year that they've already sold out of strawberries. But they also just launched a cut flower business called Hana Fields that ships fresh flowers directly from farm to home. Michelle and her family have been so generous with us, and they've launched Actually Useful's first discount code. Go to hanafields.com, that's HANA fields.com, and use code Actually25 for 25% off. Michelle sent Josh, AJ, and I each a bouquet of flowers, and they're gorgeous. The bouquet I got was so autumnal, and it had so many sustainable plants in it, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but every flower in the bouquet was cat safe, which literally never happens. So check them out. Okay, back to the show. Well, everyone, we would love to hear your ideas or your problems that might be able to be solved with tech. You can reach us on social media at actuallyusefulpod, or you can email us at heyactuallyuseful@gmail.com. And that's our show for today. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us and spilling some tea about what it's like to work at Amazon. We're so excited we got to speak to you, and we wish everybody at Amazon was as good of a customer advocate as you are. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and yeah, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Actually Useful is part of the Industry Plant Podcast Network. It's co-hosted by Ariel Butters and AJ Weaver. It's executive produced and edited by Josh Stratton Carlson. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to our Substack or YouTube at Actually Useful Pod, or give us a follow on most social media platforms.